Timeline of the Bondi Beach terrorist attack, December 14th, 2025. The attack occurred on Sunday, December 14th, 2025, during a public Hanukkah celebration, Chanukah by the Sea, organised by Shabbat of Bondi at Archer Park, near the Bondi Pavilion and beachfront in Sydney, Australia. Over 1,000 people were attending the event, marking the first night of Hanukkah, approximately 6:45 to 6:47 p.m. AEDT. Two gunmen armed with long rifles and dressed in black opened fire on the crowd in Archer Park and from a nearby footbridge over Campbell Parade. Multiple shots, dozens reported, were fired, targeting families and attendees at the Jewish community event. Panic ensued as people fled the beach and park. Witnesses describe scenes of chaos with people running into the water or seeking cover. Shortly after the shooting began, a brave bystander tackled one of the gunmen on the footbridge, wresting the rifle away from him. Police arrived rapidly and engaged the attackers. Within minutes of police arrival, officers shot both gunmen. One was killed at the scene, the second was seriously injured and taken into custody in critical condition, hospitalised under guard. Around 7 p.m. AEDT, New South Wales Police issued a public alert about a developing incident at Bondi, urging people to avoid the area or take shelter. Evening, post 7 p.m, emergency services responded en masse. 29 people were injured, including 2 police officers, and transported to hospitals. Police located a vehicle linked to the attackers containing several suspected improvised explosive devices, IEDs, which were safely neutralised by the bomb squad. Later that evening, Police Commissioner Mal Lanyon declared the incident a terrorist attack, stating it was designed to target the Jewish community. Authorities investigated a possible third suspect, but later indicated no ongoing active threat. A raid was conducted on the home of identified gunman Navid Akram in Bonnyrigg, southwest Sydney. Night of December 14th, Premier Chris Minns and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese addressed the nation, condemning the attack as an act of evil antisemitism and terrorism. Death toll confirmed at 11 victims, plus 1 gunman killed, with 1 victim identified as Rabbi Eli Schlanger, an organizer of the event. An Israeli citizen was among the deceased.
Oh! C'est un malade! Oh non, gros! Oh! Ouais, mais il y a son pote, il va se faire tirer dessus. Il est trop con, le mec qui a l'arme. Le mec est hyper courageux. Oh. Wesh. Oh l'enculé, il a pris une deuxième arme. En gros, il a récupéré l'arme du mec qui... Tu sais, il l'avait pris dans sa main là. Mais il y en a un deuxième là, ils sont tous les deux sur le bridge. Oui, oui, j'ai vu. Tu les vois les deux? Ouais. Mais gars, je comprends pas ce qui se passe, gars. Je suis terrorisé. Mec, c'est un attentat, frère. Eh, il y en a un, il est en dessous du bridge. Mais genre, c'est un attentat devant nos yeux? Ouais. Gars, 1 minute de plus, on était dehors. Oh! C'est un malade. Oh non, gros! Oh! Ouais, mais il y a son pote, il va se faire tirer dessus. Il est trop con, le mec qui a l'arme. Le mec est hyper courageux. Oh. Wesh. Oh l'enculé, il a pris une deuxième arme. En gros, il a récupéré l'arme du mec qui... Tu sais, il l'avait pris dans sa main là.
Mais il y en a un deuxième là, ils sont tous les deux sur le bridge.
Oui, oui, j'ai vu, j'ai vu.
Tu les vois les deux?
Ouais.
Mais gars, je comprends pas ce qui se passe, gars. Je suis terrorisé.
Mec, c'est un attentat, frère. Eh, il y en a un, il est en dessous du bridge.
Mais genre, c'est un attentat devant nos yeux?
Ouais.
Gars, une minute de plus, on était dehors.
Shit! Fuck!
Just kill him.
He's dead, he's dead, he's dead.
Good. They have to, but fucking move. Hey, take a walk, take a walk.
Get off! Hey, he's hit! He's hit! He's hit!
Tell me what happened.
I was here with my family. It was a Hanukkah celebration. There were hundreds of people. There were children. There were elderly families enjoying themselves. Children, kids, at a festival, playing, and then all of a sudden it's absolute chaos. There's guns, fire everywhere, people ducking. It was absolute chaos. We didn't know what was happening, where the gunfire was coming from. I saw blood gushing in front of me. I saw people hit, saw people fall to the ground. My only concern was, where are my kids? Where are my kids? Where's my wife? Where's my family? I survived October 7th. I lived in Israel the last 13 years. We came here only 2 weeks ago to work with the Jewish community, to fight anti-Semitism, to fight this bloodthirsty, ravaging hatred.
That's why you're here.
That's why I'm here. You know, we've lived through worse. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get the bastards that did this.
Tell me, did you see the gunman?
I did. I saw at least one gunman firing. Looked like a shotgun, firing randomly in all directions. I saw children falling to the floor. So elderly. I saw invalids. I saw people just. It was an absolute bloodbath. Blood gushing everywhere. You know, October 7th. That's the last time I saw this. I never thought I would see this in Australia, not in my lifetime.
On Bondi Beach.
On Bondi Beach, of all places, this iconic place.
Your children, your wife.
My children, my wife is safe, thank God. They're okay. They managed to get away, but I didn't know. I didn't know where they were, and that's nothing. There's no greater fear, no greater horror not knowing where your family is. They're okay. I'll be okay.
You're a legend. Thank you. And
we don't want to speculate on what the factors are that have contributed to this awful tragedy that seems to be of a huge scale. You know, the fact that we know that 10 people have lost their lives today is utterly horrendous, and you know, my heart breaks for those people and their families and for the communities affected across the world. I think it's important to note that the escalation of this narrative of who we're against and how much we want to divide each other and how much we want to attack each other, that is really at the core of a lot of the problems that we have in the country at the moment. And I firmly believe that people are good and that given the opportunity, they will look out for each other. And I just want to say that as much as possible, we should try and detoxify the way that we think of people who aren't like us, because our diversity in this country is our strength. And I firmly am on the side of working together and celebrating our difference, because, you know, I was a community organiser a long, long time ago, and the strongest campaigns that we ever worked on were about bringing people of different faiths and different worldviews and different backgrounds together to find what we had in common. And at times like this, it makes me think of, you know, what happened with Jo Cox and her speech and that mantra that she had about more in common. We have more in common than that divides us. And that is the most true statement we can think of at very difficult, testing and anxiety-inducing times. And, you know, I wish the best for everybody watching who is feeling anxious, and I hope we do get some formal news soon.
Still, he's in the hospital and we don't know exactly what's going inside, but they said the doctor, he's very okay. And next 2 hours, they let us to go in and see Ahmed, because he's still inside and he do the operation. But we hope he will be fine. He's a hero, 100% he's a hero, because what we see on the social media, he's 100% hero.
To his shoulder?
Yeah, he have 2 shots, one in his arm here and one in his hand.
And have you been able to talk to him today?
No, because I come when I see what's happening, and I come here to see him, but they said he's not allowed to go inside because he have to make an operation, whatever. I'm still waiting to see him.
I am a Muslim, I'm an Arab, and today I stand with the Jewish community in Australia. What happened was not a misunderstanding, it was anti-Semitism, it was terrorism. This kind of hate grows when extremists is allowed space and incitement is ignored. The ideology behind the attack is linked to a Muslim Brotherhood-led movement. The same ideology driven the army committing crimes in Sudan. Different place, but the same thinking. In the UAE, anti-Semitism is a crime. Extremism is stopped early. This is how society stays safe. Standing with the Jewish community is not politics, it's humanity. I stand with the victim. I stand against terrorism.
Let's be precise. This was not a beach chosen at random. This was not an attack on joy in the abstract. This was not some vague eruption of chaos. This was a Jewish community celebrating a Jewish holiday in public, in daylight, and they were targeted because they were Jewish. Say it cleanly, say it without flinching, say it without cushioning the truth so it's easier to swallow. This was anti-Semitic violence, and if that makes you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is the price of accuracy. Look at the footage again with that clarity. You're not watching people on a beach. You're watching families gathered for Hanukkah. You're watching a religious celebration. You're watching people who believed they were allowed to exist publicly, visibly, without apology. That belief was punished. Because anti-Semitism does not require secrecy to operate, it only requires permission. And permission is exactly what it's been given again and again through minimization, euphemism, and cowardly language. When people say tensions, when they say complexity, when they say both sides in moments that are not symmetrical, this is where that road ends. Violence does not emerge from nowhere. It emerges from narratives that tell certain people their presence is provocative by default. A Jewish holiday in public is treated as a statement, as a provocation, as something that needs justification. That alone tells you everything. No one asks others to explain why they're visible. Only Jews are expected to shrink quietly enough to be tolerated, and today even that wasn't enough. You can see it in the footage. The moment recognition hits, not just fear, but understanding. This isn't random, this isn't accidental, this is targeted. The body reacts before the mind finishes the sentence. People scatter, children are pulled, elders are shielded. The ancient instinct to protect community kicks in because history has taught it to, that history matters. Because Jews do not experience attacks like this as isolated events. They experience them as continuations of a pattern the world insists on calling unthinkable every time it repeats. But repetition is the opposite of unthinkable. It is predictable. And what makes it predictable is how often anti-Semitism is treated as background radiation instead of a live wire, mocked, minimized, rebranded as political critique when it clearly isn't. Let's be honest. There is no other group for whom violence is so routinely reframed as understandable anger, no other group whose dead are so quickly contextualized out of sympathy, no other group whose safety is treated as conditional. Today wasn't about geopolitics. It wasn't about policy debates thousands of miles away. It wasn't about imported conflicts in the lazy, dishonest sense. It was about Jews existing together in public. That alone was enough. And the footage makes that unmistakable. There's no manifesto moment, no speech, no explanation shouted into the air, because anti-Semitic violence doesn't need one. It relies on the audience already knowing the script where Jewish visibility is framed as excess, where Jewish grief is negotiable, where Jewish fear is treated as paranoia until it's too late. And after it happens, watch how quickly the language starts working to blur it again. Incident, tragedy, clash. Words that launder intent. This wasn't a clash, it wasn't mutual, it wasn't ambiguous. It was an attack on a religious minority during a religious celebration. Anything less direct than that is dishonesty, and dishonesty is not neutral. It protects the conditions that allow this to happen again. You can see the courage in the footage too. People intervening, people shielding others, people refusing to abandon each other. That matters. But let's not weaponize it to soften the truth. Bravery does not cancel anti-Semitism. Heroism does not erase ideology. Survival does not mean the danger was exaggerated. What follows now is the familiar cycle: condemnations, statements, moments of silence. And then slowly, the pressure to move on, to stop making everything about anti-Semitism, to stop centering Jews, to stop being divisive by naming what is plainly there. That pressure is part of the violence. Because anti-Semitism doesn't just operate through attacks, it operates through exhaustion, through asking Jews to be quieter about their own deaths, through demanding neutrality from those being targeted, through framing clarity as provocation. Let's say this plainly too. If a Jewish celebration cannot take place safely in public, that is not a failure of security alone. It is a failure of society, a failure to draw lines early, a failure to take hatred seriously before it turns kinetic. A failure to protect people whose only crime was gathering openly. This footage should not be consumed as spectacle. It should be studied as evidence of what happens when anti-Semitism is allowed to masquerade as politics. Evidence of what happens when warnings are dismissed as hysteria. Evidence of what happens when history is treated as metaphor instead of instruction. Hanukkah is about light against darkness. That phrase gets used lazily, symbolically, safely. Today stripped it of safety, because light, in reality, makes you visible, and visibility has always been the risk. The lesson here is not that Jews should hide, it is that the world has failed repeatedly to protect them when they don't. Bondi Beach will return to being a beach. The sand will reset. The sea will erase footprints. But the message sent today will linger unless it is confronted honestly, not diluted, not reframed, not softened for comfort. This was anti-Semitic violence, and refusing to name it is how it survives. And here's the part people don't want to confront. because it forces a mirror instead of a slogan. Antisemitism today does not always announce itself with slurs or symbols. It often arrives dressed as sophistication, as critique, as moral urgency, as context. It presents itself as reasonable, analytical, even righteous. And because it does not look like the anti-Semitism of history books, people convince themselves it cannot possibly lead to the anti-Semitism of outcomes. But violence does not care about aesthetics. It only cares about permission. Permission is built when Jews are treated as an exception to the rule of empathy, when their safety is debated instead of assumed, when their fear is framed as inconvenience, when their visibility is treated as provocation. Ask yourself why a Jewish holiday in public is still treated as a political act, why it triggers commentary instead of protection, why it invites explanation instead of solidarity. No one asks others to justify why they gather. No one interrogates their presence as controversial by default. That double standard is not accidental. It is the scaffolding. And once that scaffolding exists, violence does not need mass support. It only needs indifference. It only needs enough people willing to look away, to hedge their language, to say, this is awful, but there is always a but it's complicated, but tensions are high, but emotions are raw. That but is where responsibility goes to die. Because the moment you start qualifying the humanity of the people being attacked, you have already conceded ground to the logic that made the attack feel permissible. This is why naming anti-Semitism matters so much. Not as branding, not as rhetoric, but as containment. Hatred that is not named spreads. Hatred that is not confronted mutates. Hatred that is excused learns it can escalate. And escalation is exactly what we are seeing. Public Jewish life is being tested, pushed, pressured back into invisibility under the pretense of safety, as if the solution to being targeted is to disappear. History is very clear on where that logic leads. The footage from Bondi is not just documentation of an attack, it is documentation of a boundary being crossed again, a message sent loudly and deliberately, you are not safe even here. That message does not end when the cameras turn off. It echoes in schools, in synagogues, in community centres, in the calculations people now make about whether it's worth being visible at all. That is the secondary damage, the long game. And if you think this doesn't concern you because you're not Jewish, understand this. Anti-Semitism is never the final form of hatred. It is the prototype. It is the testing ground for how much violence a society will rationalize, how much dehumanization it will tolerate, how quickly it will look for reasons not to care. When Jews are unsafe, it is not a niche problem. It is a diagnostic. It tells you something fundamental about the moral health of the environment you are living in. So, don't let this be flattened into another tragic clip. Don't let it be swallowed by the endless scroll. Don't let it be remembered vaguely, inaccurately, or euphemistically. This was a targeted anti-Semitic attack on a Jewish community celebrating a Jewish holiday. That clarity is not divisive. It is the minimum requirement for honesty. Anything less is not nuance, it is surrender. The question everyone is thinking. There's something else in the footage that people notice immediately, even if they don't have the language for it. The way the weapons are held, the posture, the movement. This does not look like panic-driven violence. It does not look clumsy. It does not look improvised. And people are right to clock that, because bodies tell the truth before mouths do. Anyone who has spent time around firearms, even peripherally, can see the difference between someone figuring it out in the moment and someone whose muscle memory has already been written. Grip discipline, muzzle awareness, controlled movement under pressure. These things don't appear magically. They are learned. So the question everyone is circling, whether they're saying it out loud or not, is this: where did that training come from? That is not paranoia. That is not hysteria. That is a reasonable question when violence displays signs of preparation rather than chaos. But here's where we need to slow down and be precise. Seeing signs of training is not the same as knowing where that training happened, who provided it, or under what conditions. Jumping straight to conclusions does not strengthen the case, it weakens it. There are multiple possibilities, and pretending otherwise is intellectually dishonest. Training can occur abroad. Training can occur domestically. Training can be formal or informal. It can come from military contexts, paramilitary groups, private networks, or criminal ecosystems that exist below public visibility. What matters is not guessing the answer. What matters is demanding that the answer be investigated rigorously and transparently. Because if this training occurred inside Australia, that is a serious domestic security failure that must be exposed and addressed without political protection. And if this training occurred outside Australia, that raises urgent questions about border oversight, radicalization pipelines, and international networks that do not stop at national boundaries. Both possibilities are grave. Neither should be off-limits to scrutiny. What cannot happen is the familiar pattern where the conversation is shut down prematurely under the guise of not speculating, when what is actually being avoided is accountability. There is a difference between reckless speculation and legitimate inquiry. Legitimate inquiry asks, were these individuals known to authorities? Was there prior monitoring? Were there travel histories that warrant examination? Were there connections to organized groups, domestic or international? Were there failures to intervene earlier? These are not inflammatory questions, that they are the baseline responsibilities of a society responding to targeted mass violence. And let's be clear about something else. Professional-looking execution does not automatically mean a large organization. Lone actors can train. Small cells can train. Online ecosystems can coach and rehearse violence in disturbing detail. Modern radicalization is not always loud. It is often instructional. The danger is not only the attack itself, it is the infrastructure that makes the attack possible. If people are being trained to carry out anti-Semitic violence with this level of composure, then the threat is not isolated, it is systemic, and systemic threats do not disappear with arrests or funerals. They require exposure, disruption, and consequences. This is why naming antisemitism matters here too, because when the motive is blurred, the investigation loses urgency. When the target is minimized, the training networks fade into abstraction. When the language softens, the follow-up weakens. Jewish communities deserve more than condolences. They deserve answers, answers grounded in evidence, answers delivered publicly, answers that do not prioritize political comfort over public safety. This is not about fear-mongering, it is about refusing to be naive. Violence that looks trained demands trained scrutiny and response. Anything less is negligence. To the victims and their families, we mourn those whose lives were taken simply for being Jewish, for gathering in joy, for existing openly. Your loss is immeasurable, and your grief is not abstract, political, or distant. It is human, it is immediate, and it matters. May the memory of those killed be a blessing, and may the injured heal in body and spirit. You were not wrong to gather. You were not wrong to be visible. The wrong lies entirely with those who chose violence. Not left, not right, just real.